Listen, juggling multiple whips is a struggle for me. Hi, hello, my name is Allie. I'm an independent graphic designer and writer coming to you from just outside Toronto, and this is my channel where I talk about what I'm knitting, how it's going, and what it's costing me. And today I have a finished object to show you, and also a couple of WIP updates, which, you know, we know is not super familiar territory for me. And we're gonna check in on how that's going. As for my mug and tea of the day, this is my brand new mug from Night Shift Ceramics, and this one, I was in like a cute little shop that just has different like artisan vendor stuff, and they had a few things from the ceramicist, including one that was like this exact like design, like the colorful window pane striping, but it was like a tumbler, like that you would put like a toothbrush in, or like if you are a braver soul than I would drink tea out of a mug without a handle. Like I just don't understand how we're doing that without scalding ourselves. But I was like, oh god, I wish this was a mug. And I was like, I should see if they make mugs. And then I found her Instagram, and sure enough, you can custom order a mug. So I sure did. Anyway, out of this, I'm drinking my favorite Sloan Classic Earl Grey. As for what I'm wearing, this is my Tekla top by Milena Jahala. This is a pattern that accommodates busts measuring between 28 to 64 inches. I finished this in the summer of 2024, and I don't actually have official wear stats on this one because this in my wardrobe fits generally more in the like pajama category, and I don't track that. But I can tell you that it's not great. This project cost me $60 Canadian in total, and I don't know what that cost per wear is, but I do know that it's high. I think part of this is an issue that like I should really just stick this in my pajama drawer. I've been storing it with my other knits, but because I don't wear it at the same times as I wear my other knits, it's not where it should be for me to think to wear it at the times that I would wear it. So note to self, put this back away in your pajama drawer and maybe you will wear it more. TBD. So let's get right into my finished object today, which I actually do not have to show you. I will show you a photo. This is the banana socks pattern by my friend Audrey of Fire and Fiber. And these are my finished socks, or at least two of them, because if you saw my last episode, you know that I accidentally knit two socks of two different sizes, different stitch counts. So I ended up making a matching pair for both of them. My intended gift recipient, I was like, I wanted to make something for their partner anyway, so here we go. Now you're getting matching socks. Isn't that so cute? So this is one of those pairs. This is the 62 stitch version that I did. I intended to do 72 stitch. I just never actually had both of the finished pairs in my possession at the same time, because as soon as I finished the first pair, I gave those away to their recipient. So the second pair now just went on their way to the recipient yesterday. So they're all out of my possession, but I never actually had a chance to get a picture of all four of them together. But the other ones, they looked like this, just 10 stitches wider, and therefore a little bit shorter. And one of the things that I really like about this pattern, which is $1 Canadian, by the way, it is super flexible to make with whatever stitch count you want to use. So the only thing that I had to adjust on the 62 stitch pair is that because 62 is not divisible by 4, which again is how I realized I'd cast on the wrong number of stitches when I went to do the cuff ribbing, which I did last. You start with the cuff, but I'd started with a provisional cast on so that I could go back and knit the cuff at the end. When I tried to knit the cuff, which is a 2x2 rib, I was like, why is this not working? So to do the ribbing on that one, I ended up just doing like 2 stitch decreases around the sock so that it brought it down to 60, which is divisible by 4. So I knit these out of self-striping yarn from the Cozy Knitter. This is their Cider House colorway, and it came in a set that included a solid for the toe and the cuff, also a heel if you're knitting socks with a heel. But my favorite part about this pattern is that there's not a heel. I mean, I did not love the process of knitting the third and fourth ones of these, just because, I mean, first of all, socks, I like to do socks as a gift knit, but socks are not a thing I want to be knitting all of the time, just how frequently you're turning them. Like, I just find that it's just not quite as like flowy and as relaxing to me as knitting something that's bigger, but I like to do them as a gift knit. But in this case, knitting 2 pairs of socks back to back, that was just a lot of sock knitting for me, who's not normally doing sock knitting. But I did really appreciate, particularly on the second pair, the fact that this pattern doesn't have a heel because of the horizontal ribbing that's incorporated that makes it have that like banana shaped curve that the pattern is named for. You don't have to worry about pausing the flow of like knitting your little tube sock, you know, to do a heel and paying attention to like, okay, is it time yet? And like measuring and trying things on. It's just so much simpler. You can just keep knitting until you're like running out of yarn and then you start the toe, you know? So I really appreciated that about it, and just the flexibility of not really having to worry about fit so much on these. Obviously the width matters, like the number of stitches you cast on, but I feel like that there's a lot more variability in what will fit people when you're doing that, because the sock can just stretch like a little bit more or a little bit less, as long as that cuff edge isn't super tight. And it's more important where the heel falls, like if their heel actually sits in the heel. And in this case, there just is no heel, and it just ends up being wherever in that curve their heel happens to be. So super ideal pattern for gift knits. I could definitely see myself knitting it again for that purpose. I also think I would like to try knitting it out of a solid yarn, just because there is so much texture innate to the banana sock with the two different directions of ribbing that are what make it the banana sock. Like that's what makes it work. And I just feel like that would be really nice in a solid color. A few of the projects on Ravelry are just in solid tones, and I think that they're really nice. And so that's something that maybe I will knit next time I feel ready to knit a pair of socks, because I think my sock quota is full for a while now, but I do think it would be really cute in a solid. So that's something that I'm thinking about for next time for sure. And this yarn, my project cost is a little bit inflated on this one because, so remember, I'm buying socks for 2 pairs of socks, not just 1 pair of socks. But I also bought another colorway during the Knitting Loft sale that when I picked it up, realized, oh, this is not actually the colorway that I thought it was from the pictures online. And I don't think it's a good fit for this particular project, for this particular recipient, because I bought it in the sale. It's not exchangeable. And so I now have a spare skein of yarn, which actually someone might be buying off of me soon, TBD. But in the meantime, until that happens, I'm factoring the cost of all 3 sets of sock yarn that I bought for this into this project of 2 pairs of socks. So that puts this total project cost at $127.50 Canadian. Hopefully to go down a little bit if I do manage to rehome that yarn. I did find in working on these, particularly knitting 2 pairs back to back, this was my first time knitting anything on a 2.5mm needle. I had just finally accepted, like, okay, even though you have your nice interchangeable set, you might have to buy a few like stray needles for smaller sizes that don't work within the interchangeable set, because like literally the part that connects to the cord is too big. It's bigger than the needle size that you're trying to use. Which that in and of itself, I'm like, that tells me this is too small a needle. So the 2.5, I did not find like uncomfortable to work with in terms of when I'm sitting there knitting. I'm like, I didn't find it awkward. Because like, I've tried knitting with like shorties before, for example, and those I hate. Just the feeling of the knitting itself, like the gestures that you're making, the way that you're holding it. I found it very uncomfortable. I hated it. It was like an immediate no for me. And I kind of wondered if the 2.5s were going to be the same, just because they're so, it's like you're knitting with a toothpick. I thought that was how it was going to feel, but I actually didn't find it really to be that way. I found it way better than shorties by comparison. I'm sure I wouldn't like a 2.5mm shorty either, but I just mean compared to my like usual needle sizes, it wasn't bad. But I did find that over time, my hands were definitely feeling the difference, just in terms of starting to feel soreness that I don't usually. I think it was just kind of working some slightly different muscles than usual, just because of holding it slightly differently because of the different circumference. And I'm usually very bad about it even just like occurring to me, like thinking, oh, I should do hand exercises, I should like massage my hand a little bit. And in this project, like especially like by the 3rd sock, it was like, no, you need to take breaks and be doing something once in a while, because my hands were just really feeling it, and like they were like crying out for help, you know. Not in a way that was, it's not that it was like super painful, but it was just like an awareness of my hands and of the way that they're being worked in a way that I don't usually feel when I'm knitting. So when I was done these, I was like, okay, I am looking forward to working on something at a different needle size, just to give like whatever part of my hands that this is treating differently than usual a break, because they've had enough. I will say though that the like month that I spent knitting socks, because I was knitting 2 of them, I was like, wow, I really like kind of wish that I were more of a sock knitter, because they're so portable. Like they're so much nicer to take with you places. I envy people who really love and prefer working on smaller projects. Like I can basically always fit my project in my purse, but sometimes it's more of a like, we have to really squish this down. It's like almost like we're vacuum sealing it in there. Whereas socks were like such a non-issue. So yeah, like I'm like, I even wish that I were like a purse knitting person, you know, that I could just have like a separate project that is my portable project. I don't know. We will see my feelings about having multiple WIPs as we go through these updates. But I just am struggling to see that working for me, really. But in theory, it sounds so good. So I would love to get myself there. We will see. But for now, I think stuffing sweaters into my purse is just gonna be my life at this point. So yeah, this is my banana socks. I'm so pleased that these are complete and now off to their actual home. So this now brings us to the first WIP that I'm going to update you on. So that is my Palm Springs tank by Leslie Forrester. So before I show you my progress on this one, let's run these project stats. So the Palm Springs tank by Leslie Forrester is a fingering weight pattern. It's designed to accommodate busts measuring between 29 to 70 inches. So amazing size inclusive range. The pattern costs $10 US or about $13.50 Canadian, and I'm knitting the size 3. Now I'm knitting this slightly off gauge, and that's because I'm knitting it out of the Wandering Flock Cotton Lino, which is a sport weight base, whereas like I said, this is a fingering weight pattern. My stitch gauge is actually a perfect match to the pattern, but my row gauge is not. My row gauge uses fewer stitches to get to a 4-inch measurement, so mine is a little bit longer if I knit the same number of rows. I also picked this up in the Knitting Loft sale that did not bode well for me with my sock yarn purchase, but did bode well for me here, which made this 20% off. So my yarn cost for 2 skeins of this was $70.50 Canadian, and this is cotton lino in the colorway Pyrite. And this base is 35% organic cotton, 30% mulberry silk, 20% linen, 15% baby alpaca. So there's a lot going on in this skein, but it feels so nice, like for something that is mostly a plant fiber. It's not that it has the stretch that you would expect from an animal fiber. It's much more plant fibery in the amount of stretch that it has, or in this case, like doesn't really have, but it does have the nice like softness of an animal fiber. It doesn't feel as sort of grassy as some of the plant stuff does, presumably because of that baby alpaca. So adding up my yarn cost and the pattern cost, it puts the total project cost at about $84 Canadian. And so I'm also knitting this on, I think, 1 needle size down from the pattern. I believe it's written to be 3.5 millimeters, but because I'm using sport weight and wanted to make sure that wasn't inflating the gauge of it too much, I'm knitting it at the 3.25 needle size, which to my taste is just giving me a really nice, like nicely filled in fabric. Whereas when I use fingering weight on 3.25s, I tend to find it just like a little bit more open than I want it to be. And okay, I'm gonna show you this. Last time I may have talked about wanting to preserve this project for sort of specific weekends away where I wanted to be like reading and knitting, and I wanted something really like mindless to work on while I was doing that. So I was like, I should not work on the body of this anymore. And I had just at that point joined under the neck, like you do the back, then you do your little like pieces coming up over the shoulders and into the front, increasing until you join at the neck. So I just got to that point, so it was finally just like all in the round. And I was like, okay, now I'm not gonna touch it. If anything, I will do like neckband or armbands, because that's kind of finicky stuff. Like that's not reading and knitting stuff, at least while you're getting it picked up and while you're sewing it down. And there's some knitting in between, but you know, not a ton. So it's like, if anything, I'll do those. I'm not gonna touch the body. I may have touched the body a little bit. This was part of my experiment. So there you go. Basically from the bottom of that armhole to here is what I knit in the interim that I wasn't super planning to, but I just kind of ended up in an awkward spot for a couple of days where I had finished the 3rd banana sock. And so the next thing to do on that project was to cast on and start the next banana sock. But the last time that I tried to start a banana sock when I was busy and in the middle of stuff and couldn't give it my full attention, that's when I ended up starting the second sock with the wrong stitch count. And I did not want to repeat that, but I had an opportunity to do a decent amount of knitting, but just not one that would allow me to give casting on my full attention. So I was like, sounds like I'm pulling this out, because I'm not gonna not knit. Like if I have the option, I'm not gonna not knit. And I also was like, well, I guess I could pull out my storm sweater, which is what I was in the middle of when I decided I wanted to make these like last minute gift knit socks. But I just was like, I have to pull out the pattern and kind of get reacquainted with where I am and everything. And that also didn't seem like a good thing to be trying to do in this context where I was gonna be sort of distracted. So out came the Palm Springs tank, which again, this is such a good argument to just like always have a spare project on my needles that's just like plain stockinette that I can grab at any time. But then like I didn't want to put this down. I didn't want to like go back and do the other things. And I was like, no, I can't knit 3 socks. Like I need to knit the 4th sock. I also want to continue my storm sweater. That's the thing that I actually intend to be knitting right now, minus when I'm using this as a context specific project for these like cottage weekends where you want to be able to read and knit. That's its own thing. Don't touch it. But it did just take so much more willpower to like put this aside, because whatever project I touched last is the one I want to be working on. Like that just is how my little monogamous knitting brain wants to operate. So this is where we're at, which is to get the bottoms lined up to figure out which way is the front and the back. So this is the front. You can see there is also a neckband on it. So I did, after I knit some bonus body, I did go in and knit the neck because I was like, it'd be nice to have that done before the next time I actually pick this up for its intended purpose. and we'll be able to try things on like as far as the length and have a bit of a better idea. Would love to also get the armholes done for the same reason. But unfortunately for me, this neckband is not staying because you can sort of tell even when I just hold it up, it wants to like open up and forward. It's too big. There's too many stitches in this neckband. And this is so annoying to me because in retrospect, I see exactly how this happened and this was so preventable. But let me walk you through how it happened because I think the sequence makes sense as you go through it. It's only in retrospect that it's like, how did you not see this? But I see how I didn't see it. So, you know, I'm looking at my pattern. It's telling me how to pick up, you know, what the pickup rate is and how many stitches that means you should end up with. So I did my pickup following the recommended pickup rate. And when I counted my stitches, I had significantly fewer stitches on the needle than the pattern said that I should. I think it was like 12 stitches or something, which was like a decent percentage of the number of stitches in this neckband. And I was like, okay, it's very possible that particularly because this pattern has sort of like diagonals, right? Because there's increases around the neck at both the front and the back. I always feel a little bit uncertain when I'm doing pickups and the direction of stitches is changing. Like sometimes I just start to be like, is that a stitch leg that I'm supposed to pick up? Or is that just like one of the, like you skip the bump and then you go to the next? Like I just start to feel a little bit disoriented when that happens. So I was like, oh, okay, I obviously like skipped some things that I actually wasn't supposed to skip around those areas. So I didn't actually rip out my whole pickup. I could not bring myself to do it again. But when I went and like knit the next round, I just kind of like would pick up another one in that round as I went. And I just kind of like spread those 12 stitches out, but like mostly focusing kind of around those diagonal areas in sort of the corners. And I don't feel like you can tell which stitches were picked up in the original pickup and which ones I picked up as I worked that first round. So in that way, I feel like that worked well. In the way that it didn't work out well is that in retrospect, I shouldn't have picked up those stitches. Because what I clued into only when I tried it on and realized that it did not look the way that I wanted it to was your row gauge is different. Remember? And in knitting the part of this that goes over your shoulder, one of the things that I appreciate about this pattern, particularly because I was knitting it with a different row gauge, is that it's not just like knit this many rows. It tells you what measurement to knit to. I was doing fewer rows to reach that measurement. I think the pattern also tells you like if you have met gauge, it will be this many rows, which I also love. I love when a pattern like gives you both. Give me the measurement and give me the number of rows if I'm on gauge. So helpful. I really like this pattern. But because my row gauge didn't match it, I was just working until it measured the measurement. And unfortunately for me, by the time I went to pick up the neckband, that had happened quite a while ago. And so that wasn't front of mind. And so in trying it on, I realized, oh, I think the number of stitches that I picked up in my original pickup was probably the correct number. I think that I did do it correctly. I just had fewer stitches picked up because I have fewer rows going over the shoulders to meet that measurement. So that means that picking up at the correct rate, I would be picking up fewer stitches. And I had just completely forgotten about that by the time that I was doing this pickup. And also, this also feels like another argument for me against having more WIPs on the go at a time, because at this point, I think I had had this put down for about a week. I had done my like extra body and then I'd been like, okay, no, you need to put this down. We need to resume the storm sweater. So it had been about a week since I touched it. So I was just sort of out of touch with the project. Maybe if I had been working on only this continuously, my different gauge would have been more front of mind and maybe this would have occurred to me when I initially counted my stitches and realized it was the wrong number. So yeah, I just feel like there's so much more potential for like silly mistakes like this when you're hopping between WIPs. Like, I don't know, because I don't usually do this, but I guess I just wonder if that's something that happens. And like, maybe if you are someone who loves multiple WIPs, like that is just sort of like a cost of doing business, you know, like that's just sort of a trade-off that you make. You maybe have to refigure out a few more things, but knitting only one thing at a time is super boring. So that's like a worthwhile trade-off. Or maybe you're just way better at remembering these things. Maybe you're way better at note-taking and like refreshing yourself before you pick things up. I don't know. I just know that I feel like that sort of contributed to this issue. And I was so proud of myself for getting this neckband done. And now I'm like, oh, it's not done. I sat down so diligent, like I'm gonna stitch this neckband down, which is also my least favorite part. But the pattern literally went out of its way to be like, I specifically don't recommend knitting this down or any other alternative method. Please just trust me that you want to be stitching this down. So I was like, fine. And I did, and I was like, yes, I'm done. Look at me, so good. And then I put it on and was like, oh. So I get to do it again, and then I get to do it again at least 2 more times for the armholes, if it goes well on that first try. So hopefully that is all that it is. Hopefully if I pick up my original number of stitches, then it will work out just fine. The neckband, it is knit on smaller needles than the body. The pattern, I think, says, because you're supposed to be knitting on 3.5 millimeters, and then it suggests to knit the neckband, I believe, on 3 millimeters. So because I was doing 3.25, and I don't have 2.75 millimeter needles, but I have 2.5. So it's like, I'll just try those, see what happens. So this is knit on 0.75 millimeter smaller needles than the body. But even that, like, that's not enough apparently to make up for the too many stitches that I picked up. So hopefully just picking up the original number will work. It just, yeah, that's not what we want. One thing though that I was really thinking about while I was working just the body and the round on this was how nice cotton lino is to work with. And I've worked with it before in my Colette pullover, but in that case I had paired it with mohair. So I wasn't really just like feeling what the cotton lino feels like on its own. Like as soon as it was out of the skein, when I was working with it, it was paired. It's so nice on its own. It's just very sort of like buttery smooth in a way that it's like, it's different than like a merino or another soft wool. It's very satisfying. I really like just the way that it feels as it's like running through my hands while I'm knitting. Big fan. Oh, I should also mention in the neckband, in the pattern, it has you doing the first row of the neckband as a purl row to sort of give you an extra like defined edge there. And I just, anytime a pattern uses a purl row as like a fold edge, as like a demarcation edge, like in this case, I just never really like how it looks. So I decided to omit that. I just knit the first round, but I should note that in case you're interested in knitting this pattern and can't quite figure out why mine doesn't look the same. That's what it is. So this one, we'll see. I have about a week left until like the next cottage opportunity that I actually want to be knitting on this. So TBD if I can get myself to redo this before then. I would like to, so that then I have a better sense of how it sits when I go to try it on, but we shall see. I have not yet gathered the strength to redo it. I just don't like picking up. I don't like slowing down. Neckbands are a struggle. Okay, the next WIP that I need to update you on, this is my last WIP. It's only 2. It still feels like a lot to me. This is my storm sweater by Petite Knit. So to give you the details on this one, this is a pattern that accommodates busts measuring from 28.25 to 61.75 inches. This pattern costs 50 Danish kroner or about $11 Canadian, and it is a DK weight knit. So I'm knitting this out of the Sonder Yarn Co. Sunday Morning DK in the colorway Dream State. This is a 75% BFL, 25% Masson base. It's nice and woolly feeling without being like super rustic or scratchy. And it's just in the most beautiful, like dark tealy color. I love turquoise. This turquoise I never feel super great in. It just like doesn't feel like it really works for me. This is why it's everywhere in my house and in very few places in my wardrobe. But once it gets really dark, it's a very different color, but I feel like it really starts to work. So I picked up 7 skeins of this in Sonder's Valentine's Day sale, meaning it was 14% off for Valentine's Day. So that means that the cost of my yarn was $251.70 Canadian. That's savings of about $36 Canadian because of the sale. So that puts my total project cost at about $263 Canadian once you add in the pattern. So this is a top-down seamless drop shoulder construction. You start working short rows on the back to do the shaping for the back of the neck, and then you go from there joining under the arms, etc. You know, classic drop shoulder. And one thing of note is that usually in a pattern with this kind of size range, I would be knitting either like a size 2 or a size 3. I decided for this that I want to go super oversized on me. I was matching dimensions of like a sweater that I have in my wardrobe, which is like a sweatshirt that's really big and cozy and I really love. So I wanted to match that. So I'm knitting the size 8 in this pattern. And this is where I'm at so far. So last time I gave an update, I had basically just joined at the neck. I had done the like back trapezoid and the part that goes over the shoulders and just joined at the neck, which means that everything below that is new. And I'm now joined under the arm, sort of just barely. I have like an inch or 2 there under the arm. So let me actually, I'm gonna pop some try-on tubing on the end of my needles just so the end stitches can kind of pop off as much as I need to, but I'm gonna put this on quickly to show you. I really should have taken the Tekla top off before I did this, but we're in it now. Okay, so a thing that I'm remembering as I put that on, because it was so much easier than the last time that I put this on, is that I paused and I wove in all of the ends that have appeared up to this point, which was so many, like so many. Partly because of the construction of the sweater, there's just a few different points where you have to break yarn as you go, but then also because I made a big error in the stitch pattern that I decided to do sweater surgery to fix, so doing that added some ends, and then I also started the second ball of yarn somewhere like around here, so that was also more ends. So I spent probably 20 minutes, half an hour just weaving in ends on this, but it means that it's much easier now to try on and like hold up and even just to work on and not be like flicking ends out of the way all the time. So very grateful to the version of me who in that moment felt like doing that, because historically don't love weaving in ends, but I do love having them woven in. So you can see what I'm saying with the oversize on this. Like, it's a drop shoulder, of course it was always going to go down my arms, but it is quite a bit down, and I expect it to go even further down most likely. I've heard that the stitch patterns in this are very prone to growing, so I definitely want to do a mid-project block soon. First, I would like to do the neckband on it and possibly get the sleeves started, just because I feel like having a little bit of weight and a little bit of length on the sleeves just really is what's going to give you an accurate understanding of like how the shoulders are going to lay, and therefore how long everything else is going to end up being. So I do want to do that at some point in the not too distant future, but I feel like this is looking so good. I love the color of it, obviously, first of all, but even just the fit, I'm really excited about this one. I've never knit a sweater for myself that is oversized to the degree that I'm intending for this one to be, which is also a bit of an exercise in patience for me, because the rounds just take longer than I'm used to knitting a sweater at this gauge, right? I just have more stitches on the needle by a pretty significant factor. And I feel like this project is like, it's a thing that I always like knew conceptually, but I feel like experiencing firsthand is something very different. Like, if you are a knitter who's usually knitting at the smaller end of the size range, it just is such a bigger time commitment and financial commitment for people who are knitting at the higher end of the size range to be knitting the same project. Like, if we only have a finite amount of time that we can spend knitting, and we only have a finite amount of money that we can spend on those knitting projects, any particular project just represents a significantly bigger percentage of your available time and money the larger the size that you're knitting, right? And so this just feels like a very practical reminder to me of how different your knitting experience can be dictated by the size that you're knitting, and also like how much that makes it suck when like even if a pattern technically is size inclusive, like it does go up to a 60-inch bust or more, if it's not graded well, how disappointing that is for a knitter who spent more time and more money to get to that point of the project, to finish it, or at least get quite far in it enough to really understand how the fit's gonna work, to then find out that it doesn't fit well. Like, God, that's brutal. So this just feels to me like a very tangible experience and a reminder of how different the knitting experience can be based off of your body and how you need to knit for it. And it just, yeah, it is taking noticeably longer. And I feel like that's something that doesn't always get recognized, particularly by smaller knitters, and just feels worth mentioning. So my main thought when I started working on this again, when I had finished the socks, was, oh my God, it's so nice to be back on larger needles. Not even huge. Like, this pattern is written to be knit on 4mm, and I'm knitting it on 3.5 because I just wasn't happy with how I feel like it looked a little bit open when I started at 4mm needles. I have heard that this yarn blooms a decent amount, not that it will like grow hugely the way that like superwash will, but just will like fill in a bit. So like maybe it would have been okay, but I even feel like on the 3.5, like it's not anywhere near dense. Like, I feel like I could even see a world where I knit it on smaller needles, and I just don't want to. But that I think I heard from like one person. It's not like I have a large sample on this. I feel like I've heard more broadly that the stitch pattern tends to grow because the way that the different like ribbings and things like that are gonna relax, but it's a small sample, so my mileage may vary, we'll find out. But it's another thing that just has me curious about doing a mid-project block on this sooner than later. I feel like my experience of knitting this, I feel like I need to kind of be sitting at a 3/4 so the light is hitting it better so you can really see the different sections. The experience of knitting this has felt kind of different than I expected it to, based off of the way, because this is a very popular pattern. I feel like every knitting podcaster in the world has covered this pattern. So I feel like I had the impression going in that it was going to feel more potato chippy than it actually does. Like, I had sort of heard like, oh yeah, it's so motivating because it's like you finish this section, you want to start another section, and to me, the sections just take too long to really function that way. Like, to me, a section has to be doable in less than the amount of time I'm usually sitting down to knit in order for that effect to work. Like if I generally knit in sessions of say like an hour and a half to 2 hours, I need a section to take like an hour to an hour and a half max, I think, in order for that effect to really work. Like I need to have the chance to finish one and want to start another with the hope that I could finish that before I'm done knitting for the day, right? And these sections are just too long for that. I do wonder how much of that, like maybe it would fall more within that range if I were knitting a size 2 or a size 3 as I often would be. Like maybe that's just because I'm knitting a different size than I'm used to, and that's making it knit up slower than I'm used to. But so it just hasn't been that sort of like one more and one more and one more and one more as I thought. I'm still enjoying knitting it. It's just feeling more to me like a project that just is not like striped or segmented in that way. It's just like a project where it's like, and just keep knitting as you're knitting, except that it is changing, but slow enough that it just feels like, and just keep doing this, and just keep doing this. And it has been more mentally involved than I thought. I think, you know, not ever having like sat down and like thought real hard about it. I was just sort of like, oh, it's in different sections. And yeah, so like when you're on that section, you can just like look at what you've been knitting. You can like read your knitting, right? And be like, okay, we're on this section. So this is what I do in the next row. And I'm going to keep doing that until I'm at the end of this section. But just with a lot of these stitch patterns, it's like, I think there is a section that's just ribbing, but most of it is not like that. Like most of it, the row you're knitting now will be like slightly offset or different from the row below it in order to create a continuous image, but it's not just the same stitches stacked on top of each other. So you can't just knit your knits and purl your purls, you know? Like right now I'm in the middle of a section that's like, you do a few knits and then you do a purl, and then a few knits and then a purl, and then in the next row it's like offset from that. So like as I'm knitting a row, I'm actually counting, like every single stitch I'm counting. I'm going like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And like that just, I can do that while I watch a show, but with a bit of a margin where error creeps in. I will just like realize, oh, I counted wrong. Oh, I'm off. Okay, I need to pick back a little bit and get back on the rhythm because I got too focused on what was happening in the show and now I need to go back. So I've definitely found myself having to correct more errors in this than usual, but they're errors that are not hard to fix. They're not time consuming to fix and feel very worth fixing to me because I do know that like when you see it from a distance, like when something is a very even pattern, outliers will stand out. So it is worth fixing to me. It's always just like funny, goofy little things where it's like, oh, I counted 5 instead of 4. You know, my brain just like checked out for a second, or like I forgot halfway through the row that I was supposed to be counting and I finished the row as stockinette. I'm like, what? So then just like on the next row, I'm like laddering down and like making the odd one into purls, right? Just like silly, goofy things like that. So I've definitely been noticing that it requires kind of a funny amount of my attention, not nearly complicated enough that I would ever like be only doing this and like not want something else on in the background, but just enough that sometimes I get a little bit too distracted. So I'm just like being used to fixing mistakes on this one. This is just like part of the process on this one. So yeah, that's where this one is currently at. I have not had any great mishaps in this one since the last time. Like I said, lots of like little silly mistakes, but last time I was doing sweater surgery. So compared to that, this one has been smooth sailing. The Palm Springs tank top, like I said, it has its neck band issues, but we're more on the rails than we were in my last video where like everything was kind of going awry. So summer knitting is getting back on track. I would love to have this done by the end of the summer, to sort of have it right at the beginning of fall, those first chilly days. I don't know whether that's going to happen at this point because I did end up spending a month knitting socks. It definitely like derailed the sort of time frames that I was estimating for a lot of my summer knitting. So this might be a project that has to continue into the fall. That's probably very likely, but I'm currently trying to operate as if it's not, thinking about it as something that could be finished imminently. But like, I mean, the more this grows, the less sleeve I actually have to knit. So maybe I'll be okay with sleeves not taking too long and that'll help. But I do also suspect, I mean, I usually end up knitting my sleeves before I finish the body. I just like to get them done and out of the way. I can finish with body. But I also feel like in this case, I might do them earlier, not even out of a sense of like getting them out of the way, but just out of a sense of feeling more momentum for a while, because now that I've joined under the arms, which again, I only have like a couple inches there, so it hasn't been very long I've been joined. The rounds do feel really long now, and I can very much see a world where I will want to knit something where the length is appearing faster for a while, just as a break. Like right now, I'm still really enjoying working on this, But I imagine there will be a point, probably when I get to one of the sections that's like more annoying to knit, that I'll be ready to do something different for a bit, and I will do the sleeves probably 2 at a time. Because also, like, you have to follow a chart with this pattern, which I just don't like. In my ideal world of knitting, I'm not having to look at a chart. There are things that I like that I want to knit that involve a chart. It's like, you know, it's part of the process. Do what you gotta do. But I don't really want to be doing it more than I need to. So if I can be knitting the sleeves 2 at a time and just working my way through that chart once, that will feel better to me than working through the chart and then going back to the beginning and doing it again. The chart also, so in my last video when I had to do sweater surgery, it was because I missed a little note on the chart that's like, do these rows multiple times. And now that I'm on the full body chart for this, there's a lot of that in the chart. So I'm more like on guard for it now. And it's actually more obvious in this part of the chart because you can see like this section is just very tiny compared to the others. So it's obvious that it's not enough on its own. You'd have to repeat it. But so I am having to do like have my row counter going to count like how many times, like how many repeats of this section of the chart that I've done at the same time as I'm moving through the chart. I just don't love that. I am considering just pulling the chart into Photoshop and like duplicating the rows and like actually having the full chart there that I can just go through one row at a time. Haven't actually done this yet, but I am thinking about it. And I just, again, I don't want to be doing that more times than I need to be. So I think it's just like extra incentive to me to do the sleeves 2 at a time. Unless my only qualm about that is that it might just be like, depending on how big the sleeves are, if it's a big enough circumference, it might not feel worth doing 2 at a time. I don't know. I need to look at what like the decrease situation is on them, how big they start, how small they end up being. If they're big enough for long enough, it might make sense to just do 1 at a time if it actually fits on my needle to just do in the round without magic loop. We will see. Unsure. I'm just worried that magic loop 2 at a time, they might not even like sit nicely. Like it might keep trying to like fold around on its, I don't know. I'll figure it out when I get to it, but I would like to start the sleeves on these sooner than later. I'd like to have this finished sooner than later. It's so cute. I love the color of this. I think it's gonna be really nice and cozy. Just like curl up in my nice big cozy sweater. I'm excited about it. Unfortunately for me, it's so far from done. Okay, now I have a few just like random knitting related things that I want to discuss. Some of them are sort of related to, we're going to categorize this as future plans. Okay, first up, yesterday I wore my Taylor Swift tank top and it just really reminded me, like every time I put this on, I'm like, I like this so much, except the feeling of it in the armpit is just irritating. I just did the I-cord too tight because it wasn't bad before I put the I-cord on. The I-cord is just too tight. And the fact that I think about this every single time, and I genuinely think that it doesn't stop me from wearing it when I sort of envision an outfit that includes the shirt. Me distinguishing between like an outfit when like I'm going somewhere and I like want to look cute and want to put something together versus what I would wear on like a random day where all I'm doing is like being at home and like walking the dogs, you know? I feel like I would wear it on this sort of day sometimes, like a casual at home day, if it were comfier. And the only thing standing between me and that top being comfier, I think, is redoing that I-cord on the armholes, which was definitely my least favorite part of the project, but also realistically did not take very long. And it's been a couple years now since I finished it, and I feel like I'm starting to come around to the idea that perhaps it would be worth my time to redo them. But I wanted to ask before I do that. I mean, I know that I just need to do it looser. I'll probably do it on bigger needles. I'll probably pick up more stitches. But I found on mine, and a lot of other people on Ravelry seem to also note this, so I think it's something specific maybe in how it's written to do in the pattern. A lot of people's I-cords seem to roll in. Like mine, you can see the I-cord edge at the shoulder and you can kind of see it here, but then like the further down it gets and the more into the armpit it gets, like it just sort of curls into the inside and you can't see it at all. So if I'm gonna go to the trouble of reknitting this, I would love to do that in a way where you're actually going to be able to see the I-cord that I spent all this time knitting. And I do think it's a really cute finishing detail. And it doesn't super bother me that in its current state, it rolls in. But again, if I'm gonna go to the effort of redoing it, I would like it to turn out more as it's intended, where you can actually see it all the way around. So I'm just wondering if you have knit this top or had a similar issue on a similar situation in a pattern, and what you did to fix it, what you would do to prevent it from curling in like that. If I just need to follow like a slightly different version of I-cord directions, I don't know exactly, but if you have advice for this, please let me know, because I'm trying to muster up the will to redo the armholes on this, but I just want to know that I'm doing it the best I can. Also related to future plans, in a recent video, I had been mocking up possibilities for the groundbreaking sweater by Clara Cecilia. In my continued color exploration for this project, one of the things that I'm considering is using like a variegated yarn for the tulips themselves. And I was chatting with Lauren. I feel like Lauren is now like famous on the channel. She is like the knitting friend who I'm constantly talking about. But I was lamenting to Lauren how hard it is sometimes if you found a dyer and they will have, you know, their set of colors, but like the color that you want is available on a huge array of bases, and you're trying to find examples of what it looks like knitted up. So you're trying to look at projects on Ravelry that have used this colorway. But the problem is that because they have a bajillion different bases, it's so tedious, because on Ravelry, like the way that I've always found to look at a particular colorway's projects is like you first have to go to a base of a particular designer, and once you've clicked on the base, it'll show you all the different colorways available in that base, and then from there you can see the projects in that colorway in that base. But so if they have like 12 different bases that colorway is available on, it's so much clicking into so many bases and then finding that colorway in each individual base. Like, it's just so tedious. And so I was lamenting that you can't just search by a colorway from a dyer and see every project knit out of that colorway in every possible base. And Lauren was like, oh my God, I just figured this out. You actually can do that. And I feel like I'm pretty good at Ravelry. I will get pretty far down into filters. I've figured out how to do a lot of stuff on Ravelry, and I had never figured out how to do this. So I just feel like I need to like PSA show you how to do this, because this for me is a total game changer when looking at particularly variegated. So like you really are just trying to see how they knit up when you've only seen a skein or like a tiny swatch, and you just really want to see, what does it look like in a sweater? What does it look like knit flat? What does it look like in the round? Game changer. So the way you do this, you start the process the same way, like when you're doing a search for yarn on Ravelry, where you'd put in the dyer name or like the yarn brand name, whatever it is. And when you're on that page, instead of going to the page that shows you all the different like types of yarn they have, their bases, right? That's where I usually would go, because there's not, like on this page, there's not a colorway section, right? But if you go to the projects tab and then you scroll all the way down on the filter sidebar under the like more options, there's an option for colorway name. So here, with showing you all the projects that have been knit out of any yarn that this brand sells in any color, you can filter that down by colorway name here at the bottom. Game changer. I feel like you need to know, because I didn't know, and I would have thought that I was relatively like on the power usery scale of Ravelry, and I didn't know this. So if you also didn't know this, you're welcome. Thank Lauren. And then the last knitting related thing that I have today is Ballwinder issues troubleshooting. So I posted on Instagram asking for help because my Ballwinder, which let me get it. This is my Ballwinder. It's the Luca, I think like Rosewood Ballwinder, and I have the matching sweat for it. And this I have had since like mid 2022, I think. So I've had this a decent amount of time. It worked for me for basically 3.5 years. And for the last 6 months, I have been having issues with it. I've been hand winding most of my yarn for the last 6 months. Because when I don't, my cakes were coming out crooked. At first, it's just like a little bit wonky, but then the bigger it gets, like yarn starts sometimes slipping off and ending up like just winding around like the bottom of the spool or like the top of the spool above the cake, which means that then as you try to work from it, that it's not wrapped properly, and so your working yarn starts to get like stuck in it, and it creates problems. It does not work. It's not just that it looks goofy, it actually doesn't pull properly at a certain point. And I've tried varying degrees of troubleshooting this at different times. For a while, I thought it was just because the issue sort of roughly coincided, and I don't know for sure if it entirely coincided. Like I genuinely don't remember, but I at some point moved this Ballwinder. This used to be in a different room, and so I kind of wondered if just where exactly I had it set up relative to the Swift, like just if like the distance and therefore the angle of the yarn traveling between the two, if that was enough to create the issue. So I spent some time, just like each time I was winding a hank, I would adjust something and see, well, like if I put it closer or further away, does that affect it? And that wasn't really doing anything, but it was kind of a slow test process because I'm not just going to be out here winding up every hank of yarn and I don't even have that many hanks because I don't have a big stash. So it was hard to like test in any sort of real rigorous scientific method kind of way, because I'm just not winding that much, right? And so just like every time I'd be winding a hank, I would try something a little bit different. And after a few months of this and not getting anywhere, I brought it to my dad, who's a very handy person. Like he can generally, like if something is broken, he can usually fix it. And so I had him look at it just to be like, do you see anything wrong with this? Like, do you see anything that seems to be misaligned or whatever? And so we took a look at it and he didn't really see anything odd. One thing that had at some point happened is that you can see the joint between these two pieces of wood. It had sort of start to crack apart and it was more separated than it is now. I think at some point had to put some glue in that joint to bring it back together. So possible that the issues are in some part or to some degree related to that. Like maybe it's just still not what it was originally. But so mostly he looked at it and like everything seemed okay. And so I had brought this with me to show him. He wasn't here. So I didn't bring my Swift. I only brought this. And after he did just like a little bit of fiddling, but like nothing much changed, we did a test wind, but like from yarn that was just, like, I think I was holding it like this while he was winding it and we're sort of like feeding it off of my hands. And that cake wound up fine. So I was like, okay, is it like an issue with my Swift? But then I have since wound balls by hand off of my Swift and like nothing weird seems to be happening with the Swift, so I don't know. And then I also wonder if just like in the process of like me holding it and him winding it, like maybe it's possible that we were just kind of like babying it more in that context because you're feeding it more manually than when it's coming off a Swift. So maybe like we were sort of compensating for like a weird angle of it feeding in or something to some degree. I don't, anyway, it didn't feel like it definitely meant that we had eliminated the problem. And then, yeah, sure enough, like next time I tried to use it with the Swift, it was still doing the same thing. But again, the Swift just winding by hand was working fine. Anyway, so this is what I posted on Instagram, being like, this is what my cake looks like. Do you have any idea why this would be happening? So I got sort of an array of possibilities that I thought was worth sharing because also one of the most popular answers that I got was, I have the same problem. Let me know what you find out, please. So it seems like this is not an uncommon issue. The most common suggestion that I got actually I think doesn't apply to my ball winder because I didn't show this. So a lot of people assumed that I had a plastic ball winder. They're probably at least as, if not more common than a wood one. So with the plastic one, apparently it's very common for the gear on the inside to come dislodged. So there's usually some sort of piece on the underside that you can pop open, or sometimes you have to screw it open, where inside you will then find two gears, like a big gear and a little gear, and the teeth on them will be misaligned. So you just have to like pop them back into place and then it works smoothly. That seems to be a super common problem and then fix for people with a plastic ball winder. Another suggestion that I got was to oil things, like it might just need oil, which I was like, oh, first I have to find the little bottle of oil that I remember it did come with. Did manage to find that. So on this one, because there's not actually like gears in the wooden one, right? There's this little like rubber band that rotates things, and things are just rotating on like this metal piece at the bottom. You can see in here, it has that little metal piece, and then you can see how this part like spins around on top of this. So the mechanics are just different in the wooden one, but there are these little metal bits, right? So like I pulled this off and I put some oil on this and in here to help this spin presumably more smoothly. So I did that. I also adjusted, because I was seeing people say make sure that this little feeder bit is like pointing at this, like it can sort of get turned and be pointing sort of away or in the wrong direction, so it's not feeding at the right angle. In my case, that actually meant having to loosen it a little bit. Like I would think it should be as tight as it could be, but when it's as tight as it can be, it's sort of pointing like off behind the ball winder. So I like loosened it a bit. I tightened this little knob that is what holds this arm at the angle that it's at. So I got a lot of like, just make sure you're adjusting at all the little adjustable bits into like their tightest places, or making sure things are pointing the right way. So again, I would have loved to be tackling this in a much more scientific way so that I could actually tell you which fix worked, but I just was not interested in winding like 7 different hanks of yarn in order to only change one thing at a time and then test it. So I genuinely can't tell you what made how much of a difference. I also didn't solve it entirely. So this is the cake that I ended up with afterward. So you can see it's definitely more even than the one that I was showing on Instagram, but it's still not perfect. It's still a little bit askew. It's still doing a little bit of going off at an angle. So it's like, this is usable. I can work from this and not be worried about things getting tangled, but I know it's not at its prime still. So I'm not sure where that leaves us because I adjusted a lot of things. I oiled some things. I don't know if there's more things I should oil, but I do think when I was winding it up, I think I could see what was going wrong. What it looked like to me and sort of felt like as you're turning this, right, that's turning this thing. And so things are turning in multiple ways because we have this part, like this whole piece is turning, right? But then this piece is turning on this, right? And so this is actually spinning around. Right, both of these things are happening at the same time. So I think I was noticing that sometimes this piece would go around, but this would sort of drag and it wouldn't be moving at the rate that it's supposed to be to keep everything even. And I think that's when it would like wind in a weird and crooked way, which then that just happens a few times over the course of winding a hank, and you just have this sort of compounding crooked factor, right? So I think that oiling it probably did help reduce that, but I still don't think that it's turning as evenly as it's supposed to. And I don't know if there's something else that I can do to fix that. So let me know if you know. I will also probably reach out to Luca and see if they have any suggestions or feedback on this, because I think it's just not spinning here as smoothly as it used to. I don't know. So that's my Ballwinder saga. It's gotten better, but it's not perfect. So let me know if you have thoughts. Okay, that's all I've got today on the knitting front. So let's get into some off the needles, starting with a small business shout out. So this one I'm super excited about because I was contacted by a little business based out of Calgary called Lit Love, and they are a book subscription box, which like my people, they found me. And I was super thrilled when they offered to send me a box for free. Like, obviously hoping that I would show you, but it is cute. And I do want to show you. And it was just so much fun to open. So I recorded a little unboxing that I'll put in here so you can sort of see what they're all about. They have different boxes you can pick from of different like amounts of stuff and different price range depending on what you're interested in getting. So this is their large indulge box from June that I'm gonna unbox. Okay, let's do an unboxing. So this is the Lit Love subscription box. This is shipped out of Calgary, which is super exciting to me as a Canadian who most subscription box things, a lot of them are based in the US, so that makes shipping and duties like basically a complete non-starter on these boxes because they're pretty big and they're pretty heavy, and they usually are worth enough that they trigger the duty machine or whatever to flag it. So that's a win out the gate. Also, just like, it's so cute. I don't really want to take the scissors to it, but we're gonna. I love it when things come in tissue paper because I steal it and reuse it for when I give people gifts. Ooh, okay. I can't see everything yet, but we have some things happening. Okay. The first thing I can see, and like I need to give this to my mother because this is one of those diamond painting kits where you like add the little jewels like a paint by number, but you like are bedazzling basically. My mom loves to do these, and she's also a big reader, so I'm like, I know who this is going to. Okay, next thing I can see in here, Attitude deodorant. This, you know, I had read on their social media, Lit Love, that they really prioritize like practical and like consumable products. So it's not just like junk that you're gonna accumulate. This really fits the bill. 95% natural origin, vegan, aluminum free, which yeah, I'm not of the antiperspirant life. People perspire, it is what it is. So deodorant, coconut, and wild berries, super leaves. Let me smell you. Ooh. Oh, that does smell good. Interesting. I have a like refillable deodorant thing, but I'm thinking this will go in my yoga bag because the travel one that I have in there is almost used up. Ooh, shampoo bar. Look how cute and tiny it is. This also is going to go in a travel bag for sure. Shampoo bar for reducing breakage and hair fall. Oh, made in Canada. Oh, and it's a B Corp. We love a B Corp. Next we have, ooh, C'est bonbon. This must be from Quebec because the French is first. Boucher Magique, Rainbow Bites. Yeah, there it is, Montreal. That makes sense. These look delicious. I'm gonna eat these when I'm done recording as my little treat. Ooh, I have a bottle, blackberry bubblegum and chamomile extract. Oh, hand wash, cute. This is very cute. I like it. Minimalist packaging design always makes the graphic designer in me happy. Oh yeah. Okay, I approve. Ooh, and a lanyard. Cute. From Linden Paper Co. And it's rose gold. I am a millennial through and through. You will pry rose gold out of my cold dead hands. Also of course, bookmark. What book box would be complete without a bookmark? So just one more chapter. Lifetime membership to the Book Lovers Club. And last but not least, of course, it would not be a book box without the book. So this is The Housewife by Natalie Borelli. I've been hearing about this book sort of specifically in conversation with Yesteryear, which is the book that my Patreon group read in July as our book club pick. So I'm very curious to check out more books that sort of interact with it in some way. But I think this one is actually like a thriller, so it is like a different category of book for sure, but just like exploring some related themes. And when I was ordering this book box, there was a list of like several books that I could choose from to be in it, which I really like. You're not like stuck with just like the book that is the book of the month, whether or not it's a book that you actually want to read, you know? So that was fun. I chose this one out of several options, so I'm interested to dig into this one soon. And that's our box. That's our haul. Oh no, I just had to turn the camera back on because I realized I missed one hiding in the like, you know, little filler stuff. There's also a conditioner bar to go with the shampoo bar. So that's perfect. These will go in my little travel toiletries thing. This is super cute. I'm impressed. It was just super cute. I love getting mail. Mail is so much fun. And I really appreciate that their focus is on consumables and practical stuff that you're going to use up. So you get that feeling of like, oh, fun. It's like Christmas. Like something came for me. It's a surprise. But it's not just like knickknacks. And I know that some people love knickknacks and like you would just put it in your bookshelf and be like, wow, so fun. I love having a million of these things. I am not that person. So if you are also not that person, but you do love little surprises, but you would like them to be things that you're actually going to use, you know, then I think this box is a really great option, especially if you're in Canada. And also I feel like this would be a really good gift. If you have someone in your life who's like bookish and you just like they're just hard to buy for, you don't really know what to get them, I feel like this is a really good option to just get them like a one-off single box. Like you don't even have to do a subscription. It'd be a great option. So that's Lit Love. If you're interested in trying them out, they gave me a code AllieMakesEverything that will give you 20% off your first order at litlovebox.com. And that now I think segues us pretty well into the reading section of Off the Needles. So as usual, reminder, use your local library. Even if you don't want to use your local library, go get a library card. It helps them get funding. It's super easy for you. It benefits your whole city. So first book I want to talk about, I think I've kept forgetting to mention this. This is a DNF. I did not finish. I usually do not discuss books like that on the channel because I just am not in the interest generally of slamming books. You know, every book has its audience. I don't want to put other authors down. This guy's long dead. I don't feel bad. So I hate Walden. Listen, I love a good classic once in a while. I have found myself through adulthood getting like more and more interested in like nature. I feel like particularly just like when I finished university, in the absence of having school years to mark the passage of time, I just started paying a lot more attention to like seasons and just like what nature is doing. Anyway, I really felt like Walden is something that I think that I will really appreciate at this point in my life. You know, guy going and living in the woods. I know it's like a little bit like he really was like in his parents' big backyard. He's not really that off the grid. But I just really thought that somebody waxing poetic about like leaving society behind for a bit and spending a lot of time in nature, I really thought that was going to do something for me. I hated this book. And I first started this one as an audiobook. I had a long drive and was like, I feel like this will be a really nice audiobook. And the one that I got using Libby through my library, we love a library, it was not a good first impression because the narrator, it's this sort of like croaky old man's voice that is so clearly intended to sound sort of like old and wizened, you know, like, oh, I'm so like worldly and know so much and let me impart my wisdom. That just really like a big part of my issue with the book is how hideously pretentious I find the whole thing to be. But that was then so compounded by the voice. And so for a while I was like, okay, but like maybe I'm not really giving it a fair chance because I just hate this narrator voice so much. Maybe just like reading it with my eyeballs, I will enjoy this more. And I got a super cute little edition of it. It's adorable. And I still hated it. So, and like, there are multiple issues with this, like one of which it's very old. And it really reads like the worst possible version of a really old book. Like the degree of like absolutely absurd, just full frontal racism in it is like truly shocking in a way that like, it's not that I've never read an old book and been like, wow, that's racist, but this one, just, there are sentences that just come out of absolute nowhere that I truly am like, did I read that right? And I'm like, oh no, you sure did. And it's, I feel like the sort of literary canon has sort of, we will do a lot of sort of discussing like the merits of something. We put a little footnote on like, of course it's super racist and we don't condone this part, but like, here's the things that are interesting and that we're going to talk about, and we're going to like remember that this is going on, but you know, let's also talk about the things that are interesting in it. And this one, I'm like, I don't even really feel like it was doing anything interesting either. Like, I hated how racist it was, and I hated everything else about it. And it just, there's something so deeply self-righteous about like the entire voice of the book that I simply couldn't stand. And I kept waiting for it to like be less of that, or at least for that to start to feel secondary to a larger theme or purpose. But the self-importance of it, if you've ever read Moby Dick, like Moby Dick is a book that I found kind of tedious to read at times, but also felt like it was really building and it was really worthwhile in the end. Like, there's so much talk about just like, here's exactly how whaling works, and here's everything about the anatomy of a whale that you never needed to know. But I feel like in the end, like, it ultimately is in service of something that like you kind of muddle through, but then at the end you're like, okay, like I'm kind of like, okay, I see what that was doing. This book, it's literally just like, here's 10 pages of me outlining the specifics of I did really enjoy how many times he referred to himself hoeing around. I know that's not what he was talking about, but it just, when I really came to hate this man, I did really appreciate laughing at when he said things that now mean things that meant very different things than when he was saying them. It was so self-important. I think I ultimately gave up about halfway through. Maybe the second half gets wonderful, and that's what has made it a classic that people are so obsessed with. I don't know. I found it completely intolerable, and that's like, as someone who went in like really expecting to look, like, I thought that this book was probably going to like be quite moving to me, and for something to not only just like disappoint a little, underwhelm, but like, oh no, I hated this book. Hated this book. So let me know if you have thoughts about Walton. If you loved Walton, I would love to hear about your experience of it, and you know, what about it you enjoyed, because I honestly feel like ripped off, that I feel like I got nothing positive out of this, and if I can get something positive out of it via you, that would honestly make me feel better. So let me know. If you hate it as much as I do, also let me know. I DNF'd this book probably 2 months ago at this point. I just realized that I had never talked about it here, and I feel that I need to. The other book that I want to talk about, it's not a pan. This is from an all-time favorite author of mine, Mary H.K. Choi. Her latest release, Pool House, just came out, and what a weird book. Complimentary. So the basic premise of this book, to not tell you too much, is that it's basically about a mother and a daughter, who the mother sort of is famous in sort of like an indie cult classic movie kind of way. So like, the people who know her like really know her, but like, she's not super like high on the radar otherwise. So it's her and her adult daughter who now like live in her mom's house, and because they're sort of now in hard financial times, they will like rent out their main house and live in their pool house while there are tenants in the main house. And it's just sort of about their like weird, messed up little family dynamic, and the way that there's also a third main character who is the like TV brother of this like family sitcom that her mom used to be on. Like, he played her son, and so the daughter has sort of this funny relationship where he's like sort of like a brother in her family that she's not really related to, and like, she wasn't in the show. So it's just it's just like, if you love like a messy family sticky stuff and you like a more literary read, this is a really good one. I enjoyed this book because I always enjoy her books. It was an interesting read for me, like, from her as an author, because I think this is her first like adult fiction. She was previously writing YA, and then her last book, Yoke, was sort of on the cusp. I think it was sort of like in the like new adult or like crossover sort of category. This is her first one that it's definitely in the just like adult fiction, like probably in the like literature section of the bookstore. You know, it's sort of literary in style, and because of that, it was interesting for me to read, in that I'm used to sort of tearing through her books, like her YA books. I would just like inhale them, like in one I read like on a plane in one sitting. You know, like that's the kind of compulsive readability I'm used to having from her. This was so different, and not in a way where like, oh, I just didn't want to keep reading it, but in a way where like I found the language itself kind of inherently slowed me down. I think it's sort of a purpose. It's sort of like almost, I want to say like languid in its language. It's like, it feels like it's deliberately slowing you down and kind of forcing you to read each sentence with a little more intention, because it's like there's something like really happening. There's a lot of like very visceral and also unexpected imagery woven through in the way that she describes things. That's very like, where in your brain did you find that comparison? But it's very like, it's so apt, but it's like, how on earth did you like connect these two dots? But I'm so interested in like traveling this path that you created between them. So it was a slow read, but more in a way of like, I feel like I'm really being invited to like savor it in a different way. So it took me, I think like 3 weeks to read this book, which is pretty unusual for me for a book that I am like enjoying. And like, it's not a long book. It's like barely 300 pages long. So that to me was a slow read, but a rare slow read that I genuinely enjoyed. Also, like, the story of this it's a weird book. The ending is weird. Like, it almost feels weird to say that I liked it because it's just like so kind of off the wall in the way that the story wraps up. But I don't know, like I left it feeling like, wow, like what a weird journey I just took with you. And I wouldn't have it any other way, you know? It's very interesting to me to read this kind of thing coming from an author who I love so much, but usually for sort of a different style. But it's like I see the common threads, but it's like we're really going in a different direction now. And I will read anything Mary H.K. Choi writes. I trust her with my life. Also, by the time this video goes up, there will be a new selection for my August Patreon book club pick. As of recording, I don't know what that is yet, but I will pop it up here. So if this book interests you, if you want to join our book club for this book, we always do our chat at the end of the month, usually sort of the last like 5 days of the month. You can check out the Patreon if you're interested. Okay, last thing in the off the needles category, this is sort of adjacent to books in a bit of a sideways way, but a movie that I saw recently. Okay, I truthfully don't even know if this will still be in theaters by the time this video goes up, but The Invite. This is the one with the guy who was not Jonah Hill, Seth Rogen. They're the same person in my head, it's a problem. Seth Rogen, Olivia Wilde, Penelope Cruz, and the guy who I don't know as well. Anyway, the four of them, and it's like neighbors invite the other neighbors over for a dinner party. And I saw the trailer for this movie and I was like, I don't genuinely know what kind of movie it is. Like, it feels like it could be the trailer for a psychological thriller. It also feels like it could be the trailer for a lot of other things. I don't really know what's happening. And I truly think that like the less you know about this movie going in, the better. But it was incredible. And I kept thinking the whole time, this is where the book part comes in. I was like, this really is sort of giving Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, which it's a play more than a book, but like I read it first as a book. I'm like, oh, my English minor is now paying off. So I did an English minor in university, and this was one of the things that we read as part of one of my lit classes was Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf by Edward Albee. And it's psychotic, my God. It's like, what do I call it? Like a domestic dramedy, maybe? It's just like people in a house slowly losing their minds. and it's also funny, and it's also like messed up and bad. But it's just like riveting as a play. It's just like rapid fire dialogue like the whole time. Like, as a Gilmore Girls fan, you know, like I love something that's like almost entirely dialogue. And that's what Gilmore Girls is. That's what Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf is. That is what The Invite is. So I was having this thought the whole time. And then I was so thrilled when afterward, I know I like a movie when I get home and just want to like Google stuff about the movie. I was just like, I just need to, like, what are people, like, first I'll go to the Wikipedia and I want to learn about like how it came about, like what was the sort of like production process, and then what was like the reception, what are critics saying about it. And imagine my surprise when I read two of the sort of critics blurbs that were pulled by Wikipedia, both reference Who is Afraid of Virginia Woolf. So I'm like, look at that English minor paying off. I understand intertextual references to the literary canon. So I was very satisfied that that comparison that I came up with felt like really rooted in something true, because people who know, presumably, you know more about these things than I do, also came to that conclusion. And then I was on I'm never on Letterboxd. I don't use it. I don't track my movies, but I just was like, I need to just know, like, what are the people saying about this movie? So I went to Letterboxd, and like one of the first reviews that came up as like popular review was from Carly Thorne, who's a YouTuber I follow, and I think she is pretty like high profile on Letterboxd. She watches a lot of movies and reviews them on Letterboxd, and she's a comedian, so her reviews tend to be like pretty funny. So I get a lot of traction. So anyway, I thought it was funny when I saw her name, and then I thought it was even more funny when her review was that it's basically a play, and I love a movie that's a play. And it was like, it really was a play. Like, it reminded me of this particular play. But then thinking about, like, it really is just a whole movie of these four people in this one setting, basically without time elapsing. Like, it really might as well just be four people sitting in a room in front of you on a stage talking for the whole thing. And like, yeah, I guess I just really like a movie that's basically a play. In the same way that, like, you know, Friends is famous for its bottle episodes, like the one where nobody's ready, the one that's just, it's just six people in a room for 30 minutes. And I just love that kind of thing. So such a good movie. The less you know about it going in, the better. If you do watch it, or if you have watched it, I would like you to know that the way that I went about seeing this movie was that I saw the trailer, was sort of interested, hadn't made any actions toward going to see it. Went to see Grams and Poppy, my dear grandparents. And Poppy said, have you seen the trailer for that movie, The Invite? Looks interesting. I said, oh yeah, you know what? It actually does look interesting. I wanted to see that too. Do you want to actually, like, we were going to get together next week, and like, let's go see the movie together. That sounds great. So now I need you to watch the movie thinking about the fact that I watched it sitting beside my beloved grandparents. Yeah, we literally left the theater and Grams looked at me and went, we never need to speak about this again. They did end up telling me that, like, it was quite funny and they did enjoy it. I heard them laughing very loud beside me. They just did not love watching it sitting beside their granddaughter. So if you are going to watch it or have watched it, please just like think about me watching that sitting beside my grandparents and let that add a whole other layer to it for you. All right, that's it. That's all that I've got for you today. So thank you so much for coming to knit with me. I would love to know, I mean, we've discussed many times like monogamous knitting versus not monogamous knitting, but have you ever successfully like trained yourself to have a side project that's like for a specific use case that you only touch in that use case and don't let it take over as a monogamous project if you tend to be a monogamous knitter? I'd be very interested to know that. If you've always been like a multi-project person, how do you handle what I want to call the like switching costs of moving between projects? Like, to me, it just feels like every time I go to touch a project I haven't touched most recently, I have to like remind myself everything. And does that just bug you less? Like, do you just not mind like reading back through your pattern a bunch more times? Do you just remember everything regardless of how many things you have on the go? Like, how does that work for you? Please explain. Anyway, if you'd like to be here next time, I hope you'll consider subscribing if you haven't already. But if you already have, you're my favorite, and I'll see you next time.